It's really important that you know this. It's extremely important that you listen and understand that Benny loves you. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and I love bizarre indie horror films. I feel like the best ideas are in these indie horror films that you kind of have to seek out and discover. And I just saw one that I found incredibly disturbing and entertaining. Seek out the trailer for this. Benny Loves You. It's bizarre fun. It is currently out on video on demand, and I am fortunate to have the director of Benny Loves You, Karl Holt, is here on the Film Threat Podcast. Karl, good to have you today.
Hi there, Chris. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, this film sort of illustrates the critical mistake you should never make, which is throwing out a beloved childhood toy. First of all, the trailer blew my mind because it's so weird, and it's a mix of really interesting practical effects with this beloved childhood toy, Benny, that becomes basically a killer, murderer, in all the best ways. I'm pretty sure this may have been inspired by an actual toy that you had as a kid. From whence did this come?
So actually, this started out a very long time ago, back about 2007, 2008. We made a short film called Eddie Loves You, which was made with a little Elmo toy. And I just like that juxtaposition between something that kind of only could say what was on his voice box, and it would be messages of love. And while it was running around just trying to take out, the competition and the owner that had thrown him out. That we made that short, and it went off to some festivals in the US, and it did really well. I mean, I was really surprised, but the audience reaction was quite big from it. And I always thought, okay, that's the idea that I'll take and make into my first feature. But it wasn't really an idea that could go, a full feature length. So I actually spent like about, 6 months or over 6 months sitting down and rewriting it and trying to come up with something that was, interesting. I wanted it, like you say, it's a slasher film at heart, but I wanted to make a slasher film where, often you see in these films, a woman goes off into a barn and she's killed, or two people are getting on in a car and they get killed. And then at the end, the protagonist discovers all the bodies. But I kind of wanted to make something where, the slasher was in the same place as the protagonist. And every time something happened, so there's less fodder, that every time someone was killed, it would turn the plot into a new direction. And that, it was a bit more sort of cohesive in that way. But I just like the idea of this dog-like expression on a toy. In fact, if I can show you, we've got a Benny here. So here he is, and he looks dumb. He is, and he's kind of written like a dog. So he understands very rudimentary English, and he's just kind of always happy. And I wanted him to even move with a sense of just, everything's flopping around, because it's not a scary film. It's a comedy horror, but emphasis really on the comedy, that this is just a toy which, enjoys taking out the competition.
Well, it's horrifying. I think it's funny that you actually have the Benny sitting right there. What I love also is you use a combination of practical effects. Obviously, there's some puppeteering happening, but there's also digital effects as well. I mean, you really went all out on the kills, but also the effects. So how did you achieve all of that? I mean, I thought it was just like a great mix. And I agree with you. It's definitely more leaning on the comedy than the horror. Although I will say this, if you showed this movie to anyone single-digit aged child, they would be horrified and scarred. So I think the scary is kind of relative there, but talk to me about the mix of practical and digital when you decided to use which, and the sort of challenges in the production from that standpoint.
Well, actually, there's not an awful lot that's practical, and it's interesting because the film's been out in the UK for a while, and we've had people say, "Oh, it looks really cheap. It's just someone's hand with a green screen glove on, and they've just removed them, and it's a puppet." But I think, to be honest, every time you see Benny move, 95% of the time it's CG, because we didn't have an articulated Benny. That would have cost a fortune. So this is all we had. So, if you tried to stand him up, he falls over. I mean, there's nothing that you can really do with him. And there are a couple of shots where we could grab him from the back and do this and remove the person puppeting him. But, whenever he's carrying something, whenever you want him to do something specific, like do a somersault, and which was a lot of the time, he had to be CG. So that was the case of most of it. We just filmed empty plates. And then I spent 4 years sat in my office at the back of the garden doing all the special effects for it. Yeah, this is it's incredibly low budget film. It was made with most of the time about 3 crew members, myself, my best friend John, and my mum was on crew, and it was all shot at my friend's house in the country. And I thought it was going to be this really small project, and then it would take me a year to finish it in my spare time, and that turned into me quitting my job and spending 4 years in post-production trying to do all these effects that you talk about. And yeah, it was a CG nightmare, and I didn't expect to be as intense as it was. But you get so far into it and you think, well, I'm halfway through the film now, I can't stop. And you just keep rolling until you get to the end. But it was an awfully long time, and difficult process to do all that.
Well, it definitely has this singular vision for sure. I'm super impressed that it was this, just a 3-person crew. And that's just, I don't know. I love that. I love that kind of dedication. In terms of the digital effects, you did those yourself, and what did you use? I mean, for the filmmakers that listen or watch the Film Tour podcast, can you go a little bit into what you did to achieve those digital effects in those years of working on the computer in a solitary environment, I assume?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm in a little office at the back of the garden with no bloody windows, so it gets quite lonely out there after a few years. But no, we used so I modeled him initially myself in 3ds Max. So we had like a Benny there, and then I articulated him. I mean, if you got any, I'm sure you got a lot of gamers there, and they use NVIDIA physics, in all of the games that they play. Well, I actually used that because what I didn't want was for the bear to have movement like Child's Play or Ted. I wanted him to look like somebody had played with him, that they grabbed him from the back and shook him up and down. And to do that, I kind of just hinged everything. So, you put some hinge mechanisms on solid objects, and then you use this as like a control object, and then let physics effectively calculate the ears and the legs as he goes around. And then you can build layers on top of that, animation layers on top. So if he's holding a knife, then, you take that off and separate it. So Benny is not like traditionally keyframe animated in that way. It's a combination of NVIDIA physics. And the other toys in the film, I didn't actually build the robots. I paid someone to build the robots, but then once I got them, I animated them myself in 3ds Max, rendered them using Octane render, and then composited everything in After Effects. And because I've worked quite for all of my life as a freelance editor, and bits here and there, animation and stuff, that I was able to take sort of everything that I knew from all the years and just sit down and do it all myself. But it was, all the editing was done in Premiere. That kind of moved over to DaVinci Resolve as Premiere kept bloody crashing. And then I color graded it in Resolve, and then I composed the music for it as well. So all in all, that was a really, really long process for one person to do. And as you say, 3 people on the crew, but I will just say at the weekends, we did have a bit more help. I got more of my friends down at the weekends. So we kind of scheduled the really difficult scenes to happen on a Saturday and Sunday or Friday night, so that we could actually have a few more people. But the 80% of the film, the bulk of the crew was 3 of us.
I just think that's remarkable, because the scale of the film feels like a bigger movie. I mean, it definitely has that larger feel. That's okay. I'm just impressed. I'm impressed. What went into? I'm curious about the character is originally called Eddie in the short film. You change it to Benny. Does that have anything to do with the idea that I hear about distributors all the time wanting filmmakers to change, the title of their movie so it starts with the letter A, so it shows up sooner when you're scrolling through your video on demand options? Was there any reason behind changing it from Eddie to Benny from the short to the feature?
Well, we actually, that point that you just raised, I found out that after we'd made the film, and I thought, oh, that's handy. But no, the original reason was that Eddie was made with a little Elmo toy. And so we redesigned him to do Benny. And also, I felt the short was completely different. The short film, there's absolutely no plot. There's no characters. It's the guy throws out a little toy. It comes back and it tries to murder him. And I kind of wanted it to be almost a cousin to that, but not like a direct continuation or an expansion of that idea. So I think that even tonally, the short and the film is very, very different. So so because the bear was going to look different, and because I felt the script was very different, then I changed the name as well, just to, I guess it's like you wanted it to have a connection to the short, but not be like a direct sequel or direct copy of it.
Well, I've just heard that story so often from filmmakers about distributors asking them, can you please just put the letter A at the beginning of your movie? I'm glad that was more of a creative choice.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a distributor, so it was like, when I finished this, I didn't know who was going to see it, and the reaction has been, far more than I expected, and it's gone to places that I never expected. But yeah, when I first made it, all those decisions was kind of done, from day one on the script, because having a distributor at that time was like, what?
I'm also curious about audience reaction to this. I mean, if you take the knife out of Benny's hand on the poster, it looks like a great childhood toy. I think it'd be irresponsible for any parent with a young child to have them watch this film, because I think you'd be risking scarring your kid. But I'm curious what the reaction's been. I mean, it really does lean more into the comedy. I mean, you can't take it 100% seriously, but it's a lot of fun. So what has been the audience reaction, and have you had any irate parents come after you at all?
Well, we've not had the irate parents because, I mean, obviously it has I think, I'm not sure what it's rated in America. It has a 15 certificate over here in the UK. But the reaction was beyond what I expected. It had a rocky road getting into festivals at the start. We had quite a long version and needed chopping down. And when we got a much shorter version, we got a few more acceptances. But I think the big one for me was when it played at Fright Fest over here in the UK. And it was all online, so you're not sure how it's going to respond. And my phone just went crazy when the film was on, and everybody was talking about our film at the festival, and it seemed to be the most talked about film at Fright Fest. And I was just blown away. I had a big grin on my face all day. But I think, because you often wonder when you make something, anybody that makes a film, I think you're just trying to, it resonates at a certain frequency, and you're not sure who else is going to resonate and how many are going to resonate at that frequency. And it's not a film for everybody, and I wouldn't like to make out a film that's for everybody. But I think, for people that are on that frequency, they'll hopefully respond to it well. And certainly the horror crowd in the UK really did. And now it's going out in America. It will be an interesting thing, because I think some of the humor might be lost, some of the cultural references, but hopefully there's still enough in there. It comes quite thick and fast, the jokes, that then, they're not tied into being sort of region specific.
Well, I grew up watching Monty Python. So and Faulty Towers, among other things. I'm a huge fan of British comedy. So it was not, that effort on your part was not lost on me. So I really appreciate it. Well, I'm glad you got to actually see the film with a physical audience then before everything locked down.
Only once. It got played at the New York Horror Film Festival, and that was the first and only time that I've seen it with an audience. And recently, it's been interesting. I mean, like one thing that was the other week, we got an invitation to a festival in Spain, and they're actually having a proper audience, and they were really nice. They said, "Oh, we'll pay for you to come out here. We'll pay for your flights and accommodation." And obviously, with the COVID situation, that's kind of the thing that's come back to bite me. Is that when I first had the concept for making this, I wanted to make a popcorn horror film, comedy horror. I wanted to make something where the audience could get into it, and you could kind of stand at the back in the cinema, see whether it was working or not. And that hasn't really played out at all. So now everybody's just watching it, on a little laptop screen on their own in their bedroom somewhere. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe in the future we will get to play it in front of an audience again. But it was good. The reaction we got from the New York Horror Film Festival was very good. And but that was it. That's the only time I've seen it. The Fright Fest thing, it was all just coming in on my phone, so I could see the reactions coming in on Twitter and on Facebook and on the Fright Fest forums. But yeah, unfortunately, we kind of missed out on that one.
Well, I'll say I watch it on my big 4K TV, and it definitely holds up. But I do think that this movie, for me, it's like that group experience, especially just like it's one that would play so well at a theater. Even a drive-in, I think, would just be even like a great. It's a great drive-in movie, you know, like it's got those jump scares, but also the sort of over-the-top ridiculousness of it. Just like it's totally like I saw it for sure, but I really wish I'd seen it like with an audience. I think would be a lot of fun. Are you working on a sequel or a follow-up or something now that you've done this? And I mean, I know this was like a long time coming. I mean, years in the making, but are you thinking like this is maybe a Hollywood thing? You're thinking of a franchise? Like where does Benny Loves You go next? Benny Loves You 4?
I think, unfortunately, Benny goes in the bin, and that's. But the only reason for that is we've already had people saying to me, you know, when are you going to make a sequel? When are you going to make it? But what they don't realize is, you know, I put all my own savings into making this film. It wasn't produced externally or financed by anybody, and that what I thought was going to be then a 2-year post-production job turned into 5 years. So that's been like 5 years loss of work for me. So when you top up the amount of money that's been spent on it, I think I couldn't do it again. I couldn't lock myself in an office in the garden and for 4 years do all the, you know, the animation of this film. And I think probably if you paid somebody to do that, you know, you'd be talking over probably $500,000 or something to do, like even just the sequence at the end with the fight sequences at the end, that's completely digital. Even the kitchen that they're in is all CG. Wow. The entire thing is CG. That I think that took me like 8 months to do, maybe the last 20 minutes of the film. So I don't think I could do that again. I couldn't spend 4 years of my time. So yeah, great. If there's somebody out there that's got, you know, $2 million and wants a sequel, come and give me a call. But I really don't think that's going to happen. So we'll probably have to make something next which is cheaper and more cost efficient to make in terms of time.
Well, crazier things have happened. I mean, look, I mean, 2 million seems kind of cheap for a sequel to this since you've established it. I don't know. Give Shudder a call. They're always looking for stuff. Shudder, or there's other places out there. I mean, Charlie Band's Full Moon Entertainment, they're always looking for stuff from the Puppet Master series. So I don't know. I hope you continue it because I feel like it's such a clever concept that the sequel could only Benny Loves You More. I feel like I would get me a ticket to that. So awesome. Karl, thank you so much for talking to us on the Film Threat podcast. It's been a pleasure. And the film is super fun. Benny Loves You. It's out now on video on demand. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care, everybody. Bye.